material which had been shoved into my hand just before boarding the cutter from Luna in a package labeled "Top Secret, to be opened only in space after the first hyperjump." There was also a big trunk that had been placed in my suite, sealed and bearing the same instructions. I got Hadi out of the suite as soon as the ship had passed out of the normal space-time continuum, locked the door of my cabin, and opened the parcel. It contained only 2 loose-leaf notebooks, both labeled with the Solar League and Department seals, both adorned with customary bloodthirsty threats against the unauthorized and the indiscreet. They were numbered 1 and 2. 1 contained 4 pages. On the first I read, "Final message of the first Solar League ambassador to New Texas, Andrew Jackson Hickok. I agree with none of the so-called information about this planet on file with the State Department on Luna. The people of New Texas are certainly not uncouth barbarians. Their manners and customs, while lively and unconventional, are most charming. Their dress is graceful and practical, not grotesque. Their soft speech is pleasing to the ear. Their flag is the original flag of the Republic of Texas. It is definitely not a barbaric travesty of our own emblem. And the underlying premises of their political system should, as far as possible, be incorporated into the organization of the Solar League. Here politics is an exciting and exacting game, in which only the true representative of all the people can survive." Department Addendum. After 5 years on New Texas, Andrew Jackson Hickok resigned, married a daughter of a local rancher, and became a naturalized citizen of that planet. He is still active in politics there, often in opposition to Solar League policies. That didn't sound like too bad an advertisement for the planet. I was even feeling cheerful when I turned to the next page, and "Final message of the second Solar League ambassador to New Texas, Cyril Godwinson. Yes and no. Perhaps and perhaps not. Pardon me. I agree with everything you say. Yes and no. Perhaps and perhaps not. Pardon me. I agree." Department Addendum. After 7 years on New Texas, Ambassador Godwinson was recalled, adjudged hopelessly insane. And then, "Final message of the third Solar League ambassador to New Texas, R.F. Gullis. I find it very pleasant to inform you that when you are reading this, I will be dead. Department Addendum. Committed suicide after 6 months on New Texas." I turned to the last page cautiously. I found, "Final message of the fourth Solar League ambassador to New Texas, Silas Cumshaw. I came to this planet 10 years ago as a man of pronounced and unspoken convictions. I have managed to keep myself alive here by becoming an inoffensive non-entity. If I continue in this course, it will be only at the cost of my self-respect. Beginning tonight, I am going to state and maintain positive opinions on the relation between this planet and the Solar League." Department Addendum. Murdered at the home of Andrew J. Hickok. See page 1. And that was the end of the first notebook. Nice, cheerful reading, complete, solid briefing. I was, frankly, almost afraid to open the second notebook. I hefted it cautiously at first, saw that it contained only about as much pages as the first, and that those pages were sealed with a band around them. I took a quick peek, read the words on the band. "Before reading, open the sealed trunk which has been included with your luggage." So I laid aside the book and dragged out the sealed trunk, hesitated, then opened it. Nothing shocked me more than to find the trunk full of clothes. There were 4 pairs of trousers, light blue, dark blue, gray, and black, with wide cuffs at the bottoms. There were 6 or 8 shirts, their colors running the entire spectrum in the most violent shades. There were a couple of vests. There were 2 pairs of short boots with high heels and fancy leather working, and a couple of hats with 4-inch brims. And there was a wide leather belt, practically a leather corset. I stared at the belt, wondering if I was really seeing what was in front of me. Attached to the belt were a pair of pistols in right and left-hand holsters. The pistols were 7mm Krupp-Tutta ultra-speed automatics, and the holsters were the spring-ejection quick-draw holsters which were the secret of the State Department Special Services. This must be a mistake, I thought. I'm an ambassador now, and ambassadors never carry weapons. The sanctity of an ambassador's person not only made the carrying of weapons unnecessary, so that an armed ambassador was a contradiction of diplomatic terms, but it would be an outrageous insult to the nation to which he had been accredited. Like taking a poison taster to a friendly dinner. Maybe I was supposed to give the belt and holsters to Hadi Ringo, so I tore the sealed band off the second notebook and read through it. I was to wear the local costume on New Texas. That was something unusual. Even in the hooligan diplomats, we leaned over backward in wearing Terran costume to distinguish ourselves from the people among whom we worked. I was further advised to start wearing the high boots immediately, on shipboard, to accustom myself to the heels. These, I was informed, were traditional. They had served a useful purpose in the early days on Terran Texas, when all travel had been on horseback. On horseless and mechanized New Texas, they were a useless but venerated part of the cultural heritage. There were bits of advice about the hat and the trousers, which for some obscure reason were known as Levi's, and I was informed, as an order, that I was to wear the belt and pistols at all times outside the embassy itself. That was all of the second notebook. The two notebooks, plus my conversation with Gopal, Klung, and Natalenko, completed my briefing for my new post. I slid off my shoes and pulled on a pair of boots. They fitted perfectly. Evidently, I had been tapped for this job as soon as word of Silas Cumshaw's death had reached Luna, and there must have been some fantastic hurrying to get my outfit ready. I didn't like that any too well, and I liked the order to carry the pistols even less. Not that I had any objection to carrying weapons per se. I had been born and raised on Theta Virgo 4, where the children weren't allowed outside the house unattended until they've learned to shoot. But I did have strenuous objections to being sent, virtually ignorant of local customs, on a mission where I was ordered to commit deliberate provocation of the local government, immediately on the heels of my predecessor's violent death. The author of Probable Future Courses of Solar League Diplomacy had recommended the use of provocation to justify conquest. If the New Texans murdered 2 Solar League ambassadors in a row, nobody would blame the League for moving in with a space fleet and an army. I was beginning to understand how Dr. Guillotine must have felt while his neck was being shoved into his own invention. I looked again at the notebooks, each marked in red, "Familiarize yourself with contents and burn or disintegrate." I'd have to do that, of course. There were a few non-humans and a lot of non-League people aboard this ship. I couldn't let any of them find out what we considered a full briefing for a new ambassador. So I wrapped them in the original package and went down to the lower passenger zone, where I found the ship's third officer. I told him that I had some secret diplomatic matter to be destroyed, and he took me to the engine room. I shoved the package into one of the mass energy converters and watched it resolve itself into its constituent protons, neutrons, and electrons. On the way back, I stopped in at the ship's bar. Hadi Ringo was there, wrapped up in, and I use the words literally, a young lady from the Aldebaran system. She was on her way home from one of the quickie divorce courts on Terra and was celebrating her marital emancipation. They were so entangled with each other that they didn't notice me. When they left the bar, I slipped after them until I saw them enter the ladies' stateroom. That, of course, would have Hadi immobilized, better word, located, for a while. So I went back to our suite, picked the lock of Hadi's room, and allowed myself half an hour to search his luggage. All of his clothes were new, but there were not a great many